IndyFreethoughtShow2, Central Indiana's voice of reason. Welcome to the second Indie Free Thought Show on video, and we're broadcasting from the Center for Inquiry, Indiana. And with me today are Craig Gosling and Reba Boyd-Wooden, and I'm Steve Dewar. Welcome to the show.
Well, this is our second show of this series, and we have a few things we'd like to go over today. I have, and Steve have, a few things that we got out of some science magazines that kind of pertain to religious beliefs. And Reba, what do you have? You have some things you want to cover as well.
I have some information on some of the top news stories that have to do with some of the church-state issues that are out there in the state and also in the nation, and I want to talk about a few of the programs coming up at CFI.
Great. You know, there's a lot of church-state issues now across the country, also in Indiana. Maybe we have ours sort of resolved about teaching creationism in our public schools. At least that's been shelved. Can you give an update on that?
Well, I think we came out much better with the Indiana State Legislature on some of these issues than it was thought that would happen.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was largely to the advocacy of CFI did advocacy, also several other organizations did that. And I think we talked about this last time, but the bill to teach creation science in public schools got shelved.
Hooray.
And Senator Cruz says he's going to bring it up again next year, but we'll keep watching for that. The extension of the voucher program, which the voucher program is already in existence, but the extension of it, the big extension of it, finally got defeated because it passed the Senate, but then it seems like the House has been the stronger one on what we would call the right side of the issues this year, for whatever reason, and that big voucher bill actually went to conference committee because the two houses didn't agree on it. Conference committee is what happens when there's disagreement between the two houses, and so they appoint a conference committee made up of 4 people, 2 representatives and 2 senators, and they come up with some kind of a compromise, and then they present it to both houses to be voted on. So in the very last hours, in fact, the Indiana legislature convened or adjourned at about 1:30 a.m. the other morning they won't be back till next year.
Hooray.
And they adjourned at 1:36 a.m. Saturday morning. And I had an email from Indiana Coalition for Public Education, and they were very happy at what happened at the last, and they felt that their advocacy and others really played a big part in this. One of the things to extend the voucher bill was to let people. There's an income limit on what families can be involved in it, and part of that bill was to make it so that if the income went down, if they had a low income, but then their income went up, they could continue on the program forever, no matter how high their income went.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that kind of got nixed, and they now have to go out of the program if their income goes up, but then they can get back in it another year if it goes down, which seems pretty fair to me. I don't like the program in the first place, but if you're going to have it. And there were some other things that our side kind of didn't like that happened. Another very troubling thing about that was there was a bill to extend who could accredit these private schools, and that got nixed also, which was good in the wee hours of the morning sometime. and it could come back, but it's not there right now. And our governor found a big surplus of money he, quote, didn't know we had. And so a lot of that money, also when they get down to conference committees and all this, they have all these bills. They start tacking things on to other bills, and so they can tack things onto a bill they know will pass, and it goes through. Fortunately, they didn't get any of these really bad things on there this time, from this standpoint anyway. And they did allot $80 million of that surplus for full-day kindergarten. And that's what something that the education organizations in Indiana have been advocating for years. So that was a big plus, and it happened kind of at the last minute.
Good.
There on that. So, things sort of smoothed out at the end, but I think that's a way, if they don't hear from people and know that there are people out there that object to what they're doing, they're just going to steamroll it right through. And I think it does make a difference when we let our voices be heard.
Yeah. Well, what organizations were down there letting their voice be heard? It was ACLU and CFI. And
Okay, I didn't hear ACLU down there testifying, but they did do news releases on things. And on the creation bill, they did a big news release on that with an and there was an article in the Indianapolis Star opposing it and pointing out the court precedents and how that was open for lawsuits and all that sort of stuff. So ACLU did have a big influence with the press releases and the interviews with Ken Falk and the Indianapolis Star articles. This Coalition for Public Education was there testifying against the creation this bill and also the extension of the voucher bill. Religious organizations were there too on the creation science bill. David Scalar from Jewish Community Relations Council testified against the teaching of creationism in public schools. So did Charles Allen, who's an Episcopal priest, I believe, testified against it. One of the real strong testimonies was from a professor at Purdue University who teaches some of the science education courses for science teachers, and he had a very strong testimony there. The suit against the voucher program in Indiana is a suit by Indiana State Teachers Association. And that's an organization, as a teacher, I always belonged to. And many people think they only try to get more money for teachers, but that's not really true because they also have lobbied very hard for full-day kindergarten, and they have this lawsuit against the vouchers, and they brought it on the grounds of church-state separation also. And one big thing, I think the president of Indiana Coalition for Public Education said that one of the sponsors of that extension of the voucher bill, Cinder Lysing, told him that she wants to study it more before bringing any of it back. And I think part of that is because when Joel Hand testified from Indiana Coalition for Public Education, he pointed out that these scholarship granting organizations that are involved in this whole complicated bill are not submitting their reports about where their money's going, and they have money sitting there that they haven't used, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that was a big factor probably in particularly maybe Senator Lysing, and she said that she's going to study that and try to get in more strict guidelines for reporting on it. So that probably helped kind of delay that at least.
So now let me get this straight. You probably can answer this question. All the public schools have to undergo certain verification of what they're teaching and who they're hiring. There's all kinds of regulations that they have to follow. Now, the parochial and the private schools that are receiving taxpayers' money, they don't have to answer in the same way, do they?
Not totally the same way, and I don't want to speak real strongly on this because I haven't seen all the guidelines. But I do know from sitting in on the discussions there, and one of the discussions was on the, quote, cursive writing bill, and they passed a bill to require public schools to teach cursive writing, but they exempted the private schools, and the argument was that they don't want to put too many restrictions on the private schools. So that, to me, makes it very suspicious if they can't even put a restriction on teaching cursive
Yeah.
writing. And then Senator Cruz said, well, it didn't make any difference if we couldn't teach creation science in the, quote, science, in public schools because parents could take their kids to a private school if they wanted them to hear that. So that's pretty disturbing. And the bill to change the accreditation process, traditionally there's major accreditation agencies that accredit schools,
Yes.
and they wanted to open it all up to just most anybody, all the different organizations. Well, that bill didn't go through, and that's good. Now, the really established private parochial schools that have been in business for years, they know that they need to be accredited. They know what guidelines they need to follow so that their students will get accepted to colleges. Their credits will transfer from school to school and everything like that. But if you open it wide up and all these newly created schools by whomever, you're not going to have any control much at all.
Yeah, you don't even know if the teachers are qualified to teach a particular course in biology or whatever. It just seems to me that is just so risky. We're putting our children's education in jeopardy just because we don't know if those teachers are qualified to teach the courses.
Well, and that's controversial. There's been a real, war on schools of education by certain groups. And they try to say that they don't want the schools of education and the state to have control over teacher licensing. But, I think you need to have some kind of control there about it. Private schools don't have to go by the same licensing guidelines for teachers, I know that. But the really, good private schools make sure they have quality teachers.
Yeah, they have a reputation, and that's their incentive to make sure they hire the right teachers that are qualified and have the right. It always puzzles me that public schools aren't perfect, but they offer a lot. And as far as athletic facilities go, maybe a science lab, there's a lot, and computers, and there's just a lot that a public school offers. Some are better than others, of course. And I just hope that these private parochial schools have the same facilities, can offer the same thing to the kids that go there. Or do they have to take some of their courses at a public school?
Yeah, that happens sometimes. The really good established private schools
have good facilities.
Have good facilities.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the small ones that.
I think that's the danger when you start opening it up to so many groups that can get this tax money. I mean, if you're a private school and you don't take tax money, then okay, do what you want. But when you take tax money, there needs to be some kind of restrictions on it.
Absolutely.
And this whole argument about vouchers, because the pro side says, well, parents should have a choice where they send their kids, and that particularly kids that are in families that live in areas where the schools are not very good, and maybe they're in bad neighborhoods, that they should be able to take them out of there, and that a lot of these families don't have the money to move like some higher income families would, or to pay the private school tuition. And I can see that. I can see the point from the standpoint of a parent. I mean, I wouldn't want my kid going to a school that wasn't safe or a school where they got a really bad education. But my opinion is that instead of taking the money out of the public school, they need to spend it on the public school to make the public school better.
Exactly. That's the
and
whole problem.
Then tearing the public school system apart, which seems to be almost the goal of some people to happen.
Yeah, I back in my youth, I went to private high school, and
but you probably didn't get any taxpayer money to pay for it. Your parents had to pay for it.
Absolutely, I had to pay for every cent, and it was a well-established school, like Park Tudor type school. So I benefited, so I can see both sides. Sometimes the private schools can. There's fewer students in the class per teacher, and they can take special attention to problem students like me. And so there's,
But anyway.
yeah.
So, Steve,
Anyway.
did you have something to say or bring
Well,
up?
I had a observation just to lighten things up. While I was at the gym yesterday, I saw a woman with a T-shirt on. It had a little twist on Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Her shirt read, "I teach, therefore you think."
That's a good one. I like
Yeah.
that.
So she was a teacher, huh?
Apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one. I
Well,
like
well,
that.
good for you. Well, that's good. We have a lot of T-shirts that are available through the CFI, of course. If anyone's interested, we should have brought some up and display them.
Have a few, yeah.
But all the organizations like Freedom from Religion Foundation and Skeptic Society, there's a lot of good stuff out there, and that brings up a good point that a lot of us are kind of fearful, or we don't want to have people notice us. And recently, there's been a lot of comments about if you're a non-believer, an atheist, agnostic, whatever, secular humanist, you should be proud of it. And instead of hiding it, be proud of it. If you wear a T-shirt or you want to talk about it, talk about it. And that's the way we get our viewpoint out there. And nothing wrong with that, as long as you don't get too aggressive like some religious people do when they knock on your door. Of course, we don't do that.
Well, I think some people legitimately have to be careful because of their jobs and their family.
Oh, yes.
And things like that. So I think unless you are in a position where it might jeopardize your job, or where you have really close family members that you can really be shunned by, and it makes a difference to you, I think the ones of us who don't have that problem are so already out there that everybody knows anyway,
Yeah.
who already shunned us,
I
then we should be the ones out there promoting it.
Steve, have you ever shunned anybody?
No, I haven't.
Oh, I haven't shunned anyone I can think of, at least recently. I wonder why people have that problem, that they feel they have to shun somebody. I mean, I know I know the answer to that question already, but at least I don't think anybody in our group here, I've never heard of anybody shunning somebody or being aggressive against somebody just because they believe differently. I think we kind of have a...
Yeah. Well, it can happen. But another thing I might bring up is last week I was at the CFI conference in Orlando, Florida.
Tell us about that.
We had lots of good speakers there. One of the speakers was a lady named Rita Swan, who is a former Christian Scientist. And she and her husband were such strong believers in the Christian Science philosophy that they allowed their son to die rather than get medical treatment. And after that happened, they left the church. And what she does now, she has an organization and is going out and really campaigning to try to get rid of religious exemptions within states for medical care for children. And particularly, there have been a lot of problems in Oregon. She spent a lot of time out there. And if you know a little about the makeup of Oregon and their politics, I think Oregon is a pretty laid-back state. They think everybody should have their individual rights. It's pretty liberal out there. But I think this might be a case where liberalism goes too far, in my opinion, where they allow the religious to do as they please, which nothing wrong with that to a point. But I guess there are some almost communes out there where children die a lot in those. There's a lot of young graves in the graveyards. They've discovered some of the graveyards have been fenced off and locked up so nobody can come in and see. And there was a report that in one commune they cremate the bodies so nobody will ever know. So there's some real problems out there with religious freedom, in my opinion, going too far when it allows children to die. And this lady, coming from a background that she did it herself, is really working hard to try to prevent that.
That
in
must have
places.
been fascinating to hear something like that,
Yeah,
a testimony.
Several states, including Indiana, have religious exemptions for people on medical care for their children. So, and then we heard from, Daniel Dennett and several other people on different topics. The title of the conference was Moving Secularism Forward. Did a lot of good networking with people there. And met a lady who is still very much in the closet, not using her real name, but I think it's okay to mention it in this way because she has a blog out there called The Agnostic Pastor. And I spent quite a bit of time talking to her. She's trying to get out of being a minister, and she's involved with that clergy project that Dan Barker and Daniel Dennett and Richard Dawkins have going.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me, I think she said she personally knows as many as 200 pastors who are in the same predicament. And the problem is, a big problem is economics, because if they leave the ministry, what kind of job are they trained for?
Right, especially in the this economy.
Right, and you think you'll see what kind of training do they have that's going to be marketable. And
I would think counseling would be one.
I would too, except they probably would have to take some more education to do it, but,
Social work, yeah.
Yeah, but probably, because of licensing requirements, who knows, they might have to take lots of hours of college credits to be licensed in those fields, or teaching also. And she is desperately trying to find a job. She's still ministering to her congregation. She said she made a commitment that she would finish this out. Her congregation does not know. The church she works for does not know. And she is disguising her identity because she doesn't want it out there until she's ready. But as soon as she can get a job someplace and she thinks she can support herself, she's going to basically kiss it goodbye.
Yeah.
So
Dan Barker was the classic example of a pastor who changed his thinking, and it took a little while to announce and get the courage to announce that he was no longer believing in what he was talking about, and so he got a lot of static for that. And but his books, what's the name of his book? It tells
first
all
one
about
was Losing Faith in Faith, and
Yeah.
the second one's Godless.
Godless.
So anyway, she wrote in her blog after she had been at the CFI conference that she was kind of fearful about going to it because she didn't know how people would accept her. She also was very much afraid of her identity being disclosed some way. So she used an assumed name even at the conference. But she wrote in her blog that she felt so good after being there because everybody just embraced her, sat and talked to her and encouraged her, and she said it was so nice to find a community that she could relate to. So I think that's where, if we know any ministers are in that predicament and they're trying to get out, I think it behooves us to give them some support, what we can.
Oh, absolutely.
Emotional support at least, and I've been trying to give her some suggestions on some jobs and things like that, but I don't know what's going to work out for her.
Yeah.
But that was interesting.
Well, occasionally I go to church service and I look around and I see a lot of intelligent people there. They're doctors and lawyers and businessmen that have all kinds of degrees. And I find it hard to believe they believe everything that they sing in the hymns and all the prayers they do. I think there are a lot of so-called closeted atheist agnostics out there, but for those very reasons are reluctant to let anyone know. I mean, it's a family, a personal, social type thing, and they're giving up a lot, just like this lady
But
said.
for somebody who's a minister and that's their profession, that's their
even-
job, and that's
right.
what they're trained for, this can be an even more.
Absolutely.
And then I stayed around. We had an optional tour we could take of Cape Kennedy Space Center, and look at all the NASA stuff, which was very interesting to do.
Gathering dust.
No, it's very much many things preserved there. It's kind of like a museum,
Yeah, they have
outdoor
a-
museum with everything out. And
Did you go to the theater? They have a theater.
we went in. We watched the IMAX show on the Hubble telescope, which I had seen down here at the State Museum already. But we watched that, and then we took a bus tour all around the grounds, and they stopped and showed us where this and that was. We went in the big building where they assemble the
That's the
all
wor-
the space equipment.
Is that the
and
world's largest building?
It's not the world's largest now, they said, but it's one of the larger ones. They're getting the space shuttle ready to ship it to LA to a space museum or a science museum out there. So we saw that. And then it was kind of interesting then when I come home, and last night somebody had posted on Facebook a YouTube video of Neil deGrasse Tyson testifying in Congress in favor of, them funding and giving more funds to NASA for future programs. And he's all of us that know anything about Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's fantastic in his advocacy for science. And he talked about how, it wasn't just the money to build like space shuttles or whatever, it's the imagination. And he feels that our nation has lost its imagination. And when, I don't want to say I'm quoting him exactly, but that when a nation loses their imagination and creativity, they lose everything. And he was showing how this is also related to the economic situation, to the loss of jobs in the United States, etc., because we used to be the leader in that field, and we're not anymore.
Yeah, he's a real advocate for space exploration, and he's worried that we're going to neglect that because of the budgetary concerns. And it's good to have a strong, respected voice like his advocating this.
Right. But the sad thing was, if you watch that video, very few of the committee members were actually there listening. But that's not too surprising if you've ever visited at least the sessions.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they haven't read it, doesn't mean they won't watch it on a video or they'll catch up on it someplace. But I thought it was kind of disappointing not to see very many people sitting there
Well, at least
on an important hearing like that.
Well, at least he's on the record, and his name
Right,
means a
that's
lot.
it. Even
Yeah.
if nobody's there, it gets in the congressional record, so that's good. And another interesting thing about our tour, one of the men he attended the whole conference there, and he went on the tour with us, is a retired NASA engineer who had worked on some of those projects. So it was kind of interesting to have him along, because he was pointing out this and that, and now this fits here and this, that, and I helped design this. And that was kind of interesting. I hung out with Eddie Tabash and Tom Flynn, who were a lot of fun on that. So anyway.
You're in some big company there. Those are wonderful people.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
that's fascinating. I got something I wanted to talk about, unless you want to talk, Steve.
I was just going to say, you recently did a presentation on, you sort of picked out a few favorites from the Discover Magazine 100 Top Stories
Yeah,
of 2011.
right. And I get a lot of magazines, but one of them was Discover 100 Top Stories, basically science stories. But one of the things we discuss every month here pertains to medical science, and usually I give a talk about one subject or another. And I thought what I'd do is select out of these 100 top stories the top 10 medical stories. And so that's what I did. And I think you wanted to talk about a couple of things that were listed on that top 10 list.
Okay, yeah, the one I have was story number 61, Aging Effects Reversed in Mice. And by selectively killing aging cells, ones that no longer grow or divide, health is improved. Chemicals secreted by senescent cells increase aging and often turn into cancer cells. Senescent cells play a role in repairing wounds and preventing infections. And after 15 months, equal to humans' lifespan, the mice were still doing well.
Yeah, and we've long known, medical science has long known that our body continually renews itself and replaces itself. In fact, if none of your cells ever died, you wouldn't last very long, because in order to get new cells, old cells do have to die. So our body replaces all the cells in its body periodically in your lifetime. And so what they thought here, as I understand it, is that if we help the senescent cells actually leave the body, then they can't spread whatever toxins or when they die, they leave behind these certain aging chemicals and elements. And if you remove them, you remove some of these aging properties. And so they're just beginning to work on this, but it's exciting to think that so far these mice are still alive and have lived considerably longer than they normally had. So what's true in mice isn't always true in humans, but that was an interesting article for sure.
Yeah, it's a good starting point anyway to maybe address some of the issues of aging.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had read somewhere that in your body over the course of your lifetime, you will replace all your cells 7 times.
Yeah, at least. I think it's actually more than that, but...
So you have none of the cells in your body that you were actually born with.
You're born again.
How about that?
Right. Absolutely. And speaking of that, there's just one subject that we talked about last week, and that is something every so often, I think all of us, non-believers, atheists, agnostics, we may get into a conversation or a debate, and I've been asked this many times. I don't know if you've been asked this, Steve, but someone says, well, what would it take for you, an atheist, to believe in God? And has anyone ever asked you that?
No.
No.
No,
Reba?
I've not been asked that.
Oh, probably.
Yeah. Well, I have been asked that, and so I had given it some thought. And one of the things I said was, well, if there's estimated almost 2 million amputees living in America right now, and I'm sure people pray for them, and they pray for themselves, and healing goes on every Sunday morning, most all the time on TV. If those amputees started to grow new limbs, I would say to myself, wow, I have to reconsider my beliefs and my understanding of God, that this can happen. And then I read this article in Discover Magazine, another article in Discover Magazine, that kind of blew me away. And apparently a corporal from the Army was in a explosion and lost most of his quadriceps, his thigh muscle, in Afghanistan. And his leg was so destroyed, the muscles in his leg were so bad that the doctors wanted to amputate, and he just couldn't bear to lose his leg, so he refused to let them cut it off. And what he did was, for the next several years, he worked out very, very hard, trying to strengthen his leg, going up and down stairs, going to the gym, doing everything possible. And he was a little bit effective. He increased the strength of his leg, but he still couldn't walk, and he still was in pain. And he was getting a little discouraged. This is several years after his injury. And he happened to be watching a television show, a science show, and someone had mentioned pixie dust, that someone had lost their finger, had been amputated in an accident, and they sprinkled pixie dust on the end of the finger, the stump, and the finger grew back. this kind of blew me away. In fact, it blew everyone away.
Now, can you clarify the pixie dust?
Yes, I'm about to do that. And it was just
Is this kind of some kind of woo-woo stuff or what?
well, that's what a lot of people think. But it turns out that this pixie dust is actually Dr. His name is Badalak. Back in the 80s, worked with dogs, and he did crazy experiments that probably wouldn't be allowed today. What he did was he took intestine and transplanted it as an aorta. And he did this with a lot of dogs, experiments that probably he wouldn't have been allowed to do today. At any rate, the dogs, their aortas healed back and actually grew back. So it wasn't when they sacrificed the dog and looked at the aorta, it was no longer intestinal cells, intestinal tissue. It was real aorta that was back, that had grown back. So he continued his experiments and found out that by they used hog pig parts, and what they did was they ground it up and they made kind of a dust out of it, and they also made it into sheets. And there was something in this material and this dust and these sheets that stimulated regrowth. And they found out what it was. And it wasn't anything magic at all. There were certain substances, chemicals, in this intracellular material that they were using that attracted stem cells. Now, we have stem cells are capable of doing all kinds of wonderful things. It's a big issue about using embryo stem cells now.
Right.
But we're not talking about outside stem cells as much as we're trying to stimulate our own stem cells for regrowth. So there was something in this tissue, in this intracellular matrix tissue that they were using that prevented infection, prevented rejection, and because what it was doing, it was attracting your own stem cells that circulate through your body. Usually we always have them circulating through our body, but to replenish areas and help injuries and so forth. And so what had happened was that the stem cells have been attracted to a particular area, for example, this corporal's quadriceps, and the stem cells started regenerating back, actually regenerating muscle tissue. And he actually, over a period of years, in working out and exercising, he replaced his muscles in his leg. He was back to like 60% and 80%, and right now he's over 100%. In fact, his injured leg is stronger than the other leg. And when you
that's amazing.
Yeah, when you think of replacing body tissue, even for a finger, you're not just talking about skin. You're talking about muscle. You're talking about arterial and venous. You're talking about nerve tissue. You're talking about cartilage. You're talking about a whole variety of the body's tissues. And so what we have now, in essence, what this all comes out to be is that maybe in the next 10 years or so, we're going to have some techniques where we can actually grow amputated limbs. Like I said, there's 1.7 million amputees in America today. And
Now, we had a Cafe Inquiry speaker a few years ago from IUPUI who are working on that. They're working
doing
with,
research with the lizards.
With lizards.
Yes, and that's a good tip-off because we know some animals can do this. Snakes, if they lose the tip of their tail, or lizards can break a tail off and regrow a tail. And so this is by stem cells. Their stem cells are a little more prone to do that than ours.
Right.
But what they actually did, and these experiments, and this is fascinating, they created a little dome, a regenerative dome, that like a plastic bag, so to speak, that they could put over a stump of a limb and then add certain chemicals and water and a zap or two of electricity, and they're experimenting to create the conditions in the womb where a baby is growing rapidly and stem cells are dividing rapidly and creating all these new tissues in a fetus. So they're trying to recreate those conditions on the end of a stump of an amputee.
Okay.
So it's just exciting to think that pretty soon science might be able to do what
Prayer doesn't.
exactly what prayer doesn't. And if you noticed any of these healing shows, they can heal people of pain and stiffness in the back and a lot of metabolic things and eyesight and so forth, so they claim. But have you ever seen an amputee come up and grow a new limb? Now, what they do is they look at people's legs and they say, well, your leg, one leg is 2 inches shorter than the other, and I'm going to grow 2 inches if you believe. And they lay their hands on you, and sure enough, the person says, my leg has grown. And you can actually see the leg grow out, but that's just a trick by using your muscles or so forth.
I've seen videos on YouTube debunking that recently.
Yeah. So anyway,
Also, I've heard where that sometimes there are people that they kind of travel with the healer, and after it's over, they get on the bus and leave, and then they go out and get healed at the next time too.
Yeah.
So, but we all know. I mean, this is that science can do a lot of things that faith can't do, right?
yeah, and it there's a lot of things that science doesn't know, and but the thing is that what things we didn't know in the past we attributed to a spirit or a god. Those very things we know, we have the answers to today, and so we don't have to say, well, our ignorance means what we don't know means that there is a divinity up there that is.
God's not going to have too many jobs.
Yeah, well,
He doesn't have as many as he used to
he's
have.
losing influence very rapidly. So anyway, this was a kind of an exciting thing, and we shared
Yeah,
it
that
with
is exciting.
shared it
That's
with the
exciting.
rest of our members, and so now you know it's what's going to be possible. Who knows?
Yeah.
Steve, you got anything else there? Or?
Okay, we've got story number 80, Neanderthal DNA. When our ancestors mated with Neanderthals and Denisovans,
Yeah,
is that right?
yeah.
We got some of their genes. These genes fortified our immune system to fight bacteria and virus, and there's a survival advantage over recent migrants from Africa and prevented endemics.
Yeah, that's kind of exciting. I remember when I was a kid and we talked about Neanderthals. They were hulking beasts and less than human, but now we know different. It's thought that they could speak and they possibly even could sing, and they cared about when the members of their clan had died and they buried them, and they had art, and their brains were actually larger than ours. And they didn't survive, but they did share some of their DNA with us. And their DNA was a little different from ours in that they had existed a long time and had built up immunities to many diseases. And so we all have a portion of their DNA. Now, some of us have more than others, Europeans, because that's where Neanderthals existed in Europe and the Mideast or so, and not in Africa. So this immunity was shared with Homo sapiens when they met Neanderthals in Europe. And then there have been several waves of human migration out of Africa. So the later waves of migration out of Africa didn't have this immunity. So actually, those who have it have a slight advantage. Or so at least scientists think. But that's exciting to think that we have a little bit of Neanderthal blood in all of us, Neanderthal genes. So
Well, for us, it's exciting. I think for some religious people, it's a horrendous thought.
Yeah, of course they don't believe that because Neanderthals, the last Neanderthal died out 30,000 years ago. That does not.
Before the Earth was even.
Yeah,
created.
and the universe has only been in existence for 6,000 years. So I think the religious folk probably don't believe in Neanderthals ever existed. In spite of all the fossils and all the bones and all the artifacts we have, Neanderthals never existed. Amazing. How do the creation museums handle that? Same way they handle dinosaurs? I don't know.
We have a lot of science programs at Center for Inquiry, and Craig leads one of them. Also, if you're interested in a lot of different science topics, you want to check out our cafe inquiries that we have.
That's excellent.
Usually we have at least one a month, and Andrew Olson, one of our members, has gotten tremendous speakers from the local universities usually for that. And this Thursday night, the 15th, March 15th, we have Dr. Raphael Lang coming from the physics department at Purdue University, and he's going to be speaking on the hunt for dark matter. What is the universe made of? That program's free and open to anybody to come. This month we actually have 2 cafe inquiries. The other one is right at the end of the month, and that is going to be a speaker from the Kinsey Institute which is located at Indiana University in Bloomington. He's going to be talking about psychological motivation in male-female relationships. So that should be pretty interesting.
As you all know, Kinsey was one of the biggest sex researcher in the nation, and he did so much research, and it all was at Indiana University.
Right, and the Kinsey Institute is still there, and research is still going on. So anyway, you might want to check out our Cafe Inquiry programs here and come. We have a variety of programs. We have some on music and art, and we're having a couple of discussions. We're watching lectures on music and art and discussing that. We also have some special speakers coming in. This Sunday night, we have Diana Hendricks, who's a financial writer for the New York Times, who will be here to talk about her book on Bernie Madoff, The Wizard of Lies.
That's going to be good.
That is Sunday night at 6 o'clock. Most of our programs are free, but when we have to pay some of the speakers' expenses, we charge a little bit. So Sunday night's program is $5 for CFI members and $10 for other people.
And that's a bargain. And you should sign up ahead of time.
Well,
we might have a full house here.
We could have. So there's an online registration you can get through the Center for Inquiry Indiana website, centerforinquiry.net/Indy. And then on Monday night, these are really close together, but it's just how it happened, we have Jennifer McCrite coming. Jennifer McCrite was president, when I first met her, she was president of the Purdue Non-Theists, the student group at Purdue University. And now she is a graduate student, her PhD student at the University of Washington in a biomedical science field of some kind. She writes a blog called The Blag Hag, and her big claim to fame that got her worldwide attention was a few years ago when she declared a day to be Boobquake Day.
To be what?
Boobquake. And that got her international attention. And she just kind of started it kind of a joke among college students.
You're going to explain that to us. Okay.
She started it as kind of a joke between college students, I think, because some of the Muslim clerics, some of them, the fundamentalists at least, will say that natural disasters are caused by women showing too much of their bodies.
Makes
And
sense,
that
sure.
if women didn't quit, women showing too much of their boobs would cause an earthquake. So she established a day for women to bare their boobs as much as legally
I'm all for
allowable.
I think that's wonderful. Anyway, go ahead.
And see, Craig's attitude is exactly how it got perverted, because men didn't seem to see the true intent of it, and they thought it was just nice to see boobs. Okay, so that's where we'll put Craig in that category.
That's part of it.
But her point was to kind of counteract all this thing about the Muslims in particular, and other religious groups too, sometimes thinking that woman's body should be covered, and that.
So did it work? Did boobs quake and change the earth?
There's another. Your attitude is a masculine, whatever attitude against women. Okay,
not against women, not at all.
It's a sexist attitude. But anyway, I'm kidding you.
Okay. I know.
So anyway, I think there might have been some kind of little trimmer that day, but there probably is every day. But that got her big worldwide attention. The thing is, it didn't turn out exactly the way she wanted, because a lot of the men took a different attitude than what she intended. it to be in the
Yeah,
first place.
yeah, I can understand
She
that.
was intending it as a social statement.
Maybe the men could do something along that line as well. Have you given it any thought, Steve?
Well, usually
No, I
these
haven't.
societies don't say anything about men showing their bodies. It's women. Women have to stay covered up.
Yeah,
so they don't,
yeah,
So
you're
they
right.
don't tempt those men because they're
You're right.
weak and they can't resist the
Yeah,
temptation.
yeah.
Well, there are very, very few religions where women hold all the power over men,
Yeah.
like the traditional religions we know. So I doubt we'll run into anything
Yeah.
like that.
Well, men are, they're never really. I mean, if they are tempted, it's the woman's fault, of course.
That's
and,
right.
And the men are the ones that run the families and make the decisions and declare war and kill each other.
Yeah.
And you got to cut them some slack.
Well, I really always loved Golda Meir's comment when they were having a problem with rape in Israel. And so the men on the council had proposed that they put a curfew on women, that they couldn't be out after night. And she said, put the curfew on the men, they're the problem.
Yeah, how true.
I loved her comment,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And there is, right now, there seems to be a real war on women. Some people are calling it. The right-wing elements are really, it seems, it's unbelievable. To me, it's just, I can't believe this is happening because...
That we're refighting all these battles.
Yeah.
Yeah, refighting the battles. The
This
birth
is-
control pill has been around for a long time, okay? And until recently, it wasn't even all that controversial, except probably when it first came out. It's just accepted, and I think it's like 98 or more % of women in the United States use some kind of contraception, including that % of Catholic women.
Right.
And yet the Catholic bishops and other people, fundamentalist religious people of all kinds out there, including politicians and presidential candidates, seem to want to make it impossible for couples, involves the men too, to get any kind of contraception in this country.
if
It's
not-
just really turning it way back to when Margaret Sanger was trying this, and Margaret Sanger
Yeah.
gets put in jail
Yeah. If
for
90%,
dispensing the information.
if 90% of the women use birth control, it automatically means
98%.
98% of women use birth control. Then 98% of the men have sanctioned that and go along with it. And so, this is a huge number, even in Catholics. And so the church is way out of step. And then the testimony in Congress, they had, 9 old men,
It was an all-men panel.
all men.
They didn't allow any women to testify.
Yeah, and then when one woman did, they made a special allowance unofficially, and she testified the next day. That's when Rush Limbaugh lowered the boom on her and called her a whore and prostitute. And of course, the latest with that is, if you haven't heard, that over 100 of his sponsors have withdrawn their sponsorship. And in fact, for several weeks, they're going to suspend all national sponsorship from his program. So he'll have no sponsors except local sponsors.
And I think this gets into somewhat the controversy about free speech, freedom of speech. I guess, he has the freedom to say what he wants. But on the other hand, the free market, I think, is at work. People have,
Right.
sponsors have the right to, if they don't agree, sponsors have the right to pull their sponsorships. Individuals have the right not to listen to a show.
Yep.
And
Works both ways.
and so that's the free market at work.
Well, I
Right.
think the Young Turks show last night summed it up really well and said, you have the right to free speech. You do not have the right to nationwide syndication of your free speech.
That's interesting.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that or not, but it seems to me that the public, the people who listen, if they don't listen to his show, then he's off the air. Or if the sponsors withdraw their support, he's off the air. And that's how things are
Yeah.
judged.
And I don't think we want to put too many clamps on freedom of speech
Right.
because the side we agree with likes to say what they think too, but And there's been charges that the left has also made some crude remarks, and I'm sure particularly, and then you get into the comics and comedy can go a lot farther than that.
We don't want to restrict that because I enjoy the Bill Maher show and the Colbert show and all of those great shows, and that's why free speech, as you say,
On both sides, but I
so
think-
important.
So I don't know. I guess I kind of think maybe the free market should take care of this. If there's enough people and enough sponsors who disagree with it, it'll work its way out.
I don't think he should be pulled off the air for saying that. I mean, I think it's telling of what type of person he is that he said that. Not only did he say it once, not only did he double down, but he tripled down on the comment.
But
And
if
his apology was really not an apology.
right,
No, it was
but
not an
but
apology.
if you defame somebody and say things about them, there is a legal system that you could.
Well, then you get into this, the whole thing about what's hate speech and what's this and that. I mean, there's just freedom of speech can get really controversial sometimes about how far you can go
yeah.
in it.
But I still think he should be able to say that. Anybody with their wacky ideas should be able to say that. That way, you can tell who the lunatics are.
Well, there have been TV personalities yanked off the air for saying racist remarks and lots of other things. And I kind of think it seems to me that maybe certain networks are more prone to want to regulate what the people on their network says than other networks are.
Yeah, Keith Olbermann is an example. He was pulled
On
and
the left side,
but he didn't say anything nearly as bad as Rush Limbaugh. But his employers, the networks, have a reputation as well. And in this case, they had a conscience and they removed him. But apparently, it's different with Rush Limbaugh because he's not on a cable network and he's not on any kind of broadcasting system, so he can get away with it. This is a private radio group, and so.
Well, there are all private corporations.
But not corporations that. You've heard of NBC and ABC.
And so, but then I don't know if I agree with, that an employer should totally censor what all their commentators say. I think there's a fine line there someplace.
Fox News essentially gives them a script each day that their broadcasters follow, and everyone says the same thing, so they're reading from the same script.
So that's coming from the network then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. It comes from the GOP talking points. They're sent over to Fox, where there's everyone there is told this is what you're going to talk about today. I've seen some speculation that Rush Limbaugh may go the way of Glenn Beck, where Glenn Beck was boasting, after his controversial comments on Fox, I'm still here, and then gone.
Yeah. Oh, Rush said, "I'm all right. Don't worry about me. I'm doing fine."
And he's kind of the old, the old standard of the right-wing talk shows, probably the biggest power there. He's been around a long time, so it's going to be interesting to see how much this economic pressure really.
Oh, they call him the titular head of the GOP.
Yeah, that's right.
So.
And if you say anything that he doesn't like, he criticizes you for 3 hours every day. He's on the radio, and that's hard for any politician to be badmouthed for 3 hours every day.
Well, I think the thing is too, you got to put some responsibility on the people who listen and believe. I mean, I think that's where all of us need to be critical of what we hear on any network and by any celebrities or any politicians, and not just listen to what we want to think and believe it right down the line.
Well, most people do that. They read and listen to things that support their own biases.
That's right, and it just reinforces their own biases. And this could, to try to be fair and balanced, this could happen on the right or the left, and I'm sure it does.
Right. Certainly does. So that's a warning, folks. Be careful and be fair and try to use reason along with just facts or science.
There are websites and so on that do fact checking too, and
Oh, yeah.
try to check into whatever is.
Yeah, it's called Fact Check, and there's several other.
Factcheck.org
Yeah.
is one.
And if you want to get, if you don't want to watch Fox News, watch News Hounds. And what they do is they analyze everything said on Fox News and summarize it for you. So you get all the highlights without having to listen to Fox News. But it's always good to know all sides of a particular argument. And so I periodically look at Fox News, and I always watch News or tune into
Do they
News
do
Hounds.
that also for the more liberal media?
No,
Or are they just a watchdog for?
that's
right.
just Fox News. That's
But I mean, really, to be fair, it should be fact checked everywhere.
Well, Fox News fact checks all the liberal press. every
well,
day.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm just kidding, folks.
We're about at the 1 hour mark. Anybody have anything else before we wrap up?
No?
I think that's about it. So,
Yeah.
thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And if you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section of this Facebook or YouTube site.
Yeah, and the Indie Free Thought is, we have other things posted
Yeah.
there. So they should check those
Yeah, we might
out
also
too.
say that we have just started doing our podcast on YouTube as a video, but we have several programs that are audio that are archived at IndyFreeThought.com.
Spanning several years, we have Indie Free Thought shows and interviews and lectures and public appearances.
Yeah, check it out. They're
Civic
good.
Day example.
And on the YouTube channel, in addition to our podcasts, are other videos of programs and et cetera that have happened. So thanks again for watching.
Okay, thanks.
So long.